much of our thinking, I think, is so heavily tied into the restrictions that life gives us, the restrictions that are imposed really as a result of our evolutionary heritage, the restrictions that are part of being human. But as science advances, those restrictions go, and as those restrictions go, the moral boundaries by which our conversations take place get destroyed, and fascinating new avenues open up. So here's one, and it's one concerning abortion, which is a subject that's been discussed on this channel a couple of times recently. This is a fascinating one, this. And it's the subject of ectogenesis, which is the idea of embryonic fetal development going full term outside of the womb. So first off, I'll give you a couple of links so you can get a flavour of the kind of moral discussions that would result. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to work them out, or even a social scientist would perhaps be a bit more relevant to work out what those discussions are. But, you know, these are hypotheticals we're talking about now. But I think, you know, some of the things say that maybe it'll just be a matter of a few decades before we have such technology. My view is whether it's a few decades or longer than that, these are things that are going to happen. These are discussions that might take place in the abstract now, but they will be very real moral and social discussions that will take place at some stage. And for many of us, quite probably within our lifetime. So I think this is really interesting, fascinating stuff. One of the big debates will obviously concern the anti-abortion lobby and the idea that if the fetus can be brought up outside the womb, they'll try and chime in on that, and then perhaps we'll really see where those people stand, whether it is about the rights of the fetus or whether it's more about taking away women's rights, and maybe you'll see exactly where they stand on that issue. But that isn't what I want to talk about in this video. At the moment, we have a very asymmetric circumstance with regard to a mother's rights, or a prospective mother's rights and a prospective father's rights, such that a father basically just has to go along with whatever's decided. Whether he has no say whatsoever or has 49% of a say, it amounts to the same thing. It is the prospective mother, it is the pregnant woman who decides whether she is going to have an abortion or not. If she decides to have an abortion, then however much the father wants the baby, it's just hard shit. If she decides she wants to have the baby, then however much he doesn't want to have that baby, it's hard shit. He may well end up paying for that child for the next 18 years or so, whether he likes it or not. And so whereas at the moment, if a woman makes a decision to have an abortion because effectively she doesn't want to be financially tied to a child for the next 18, 20 or more years, she can do so, whereas the man just cannot do that. That is an asymmetry in the way that men and women are treated with regard to this. My position is that it's not an ideal situation, but it's the best. It's like Churchill said about democracy. It might not be a perfect system, but it's the best of all the bad choices that are out there. I think I've kind of bastardized what he said there, but that's the thrust of what he said, and it's the same thing here. It might be unfair on men as things stand, but any other way that you did it to actually give men a say would be far more unfair on women, who are the ones that actually have to carry the child. So it's probably just a case that in this circumstance it's just hard shit on men. That's just the way it goes. There are differences between men and women, and sometimes situations are just going to be hard shit as a result of our evolutionary heritage, as a result that we are human beings. On this occasion, it's men that fall on the wrong side of it. But what about if you could change that? What about if you could have an artificial womb, such that if a mother didn't want to have a baby, if she found out she's pregnant, perhaps several weeks down the line, found out she's pregnant, decide that she doesn't want a baby, under normal circumstances would have had an abortion. If the father of the child decides that he would rather like that baby, that he would like to bring that child up, and let us say that the process by which the fetus is extracted makes it not substantially more complicated for the mother, or harder or more inconvenient for the mother than simply having had an abortion, then where would we stand on that? Where would we stand on the father's rights then to have not an abortion, to insist that an abortion doesn't take place, but to insist that that fetus is placed into some kind of artificial womb so that he can bring that child up. Obviously, in this circumstance, the mother doesn't have to have any parental responsibility with the child if she doesn't wish, though of course she will have the financial responsibility, the same financial responsibilities that men have now when women decide unilaterally to bring children into the world and the father really wouldn't rather have bothered. So it's almost a total reversal of the situation. What I'm interested to know is how do people feel about that? Do people follow the principle that simply, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or do they feel there are factors why women shouldn't be held quite the same way as I'm suggesting here, and that there's some overriding principle by which if a woman wants to terminate the life of her fetus, then regardless of the interests of the father, that should prevail in that particular circumstance. Well, I'm interested to know what people think about this. Like I say, it's just a debate that we can have hypothetically at the moment. It will be a very real debate at some time in the future of our species, and these decisions will be argued for, I'm sure, tooth and nail there. I'm interested to know, stood slightly back from that discussion as we are now, what people think on this one. Well, thank you for watching this video. Interested to hear your comments, and bye for now.